They're on Twitter saying Gag City is a sundown town. Black barbs can't use the public swimming pools because Jim Crow has been instituted. Jewish barbs can't walk down a single block in Gag City because there's swastikas everywhere. Latino and Haitian barbs are being deported in Gag City. Aren't y'all embarrassed? And I didn't even have to do any of the work. Zero heavy lifting here. This is all Nicki. This is all you guys. And bitch, I'm in attendance for this one. Oh no, y'all thought I wasn't gonna make a video? I have to make a video. I have to talk about this. Actually, I have to discuss it because after everything this lady and her stands done put me through, oh bitch, you best believe I'm gonna be in attendance to tug on that wig. I am. And so we're gonna talk about it. Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, we are obviously here to talk about Nicki Minaj. Yes. I recorded this one through already, and when I went back to play the video, audio was gaga. So I'm recording this again in hopes that I can have it out to y'all on the 25th, Christmas Day. But yeah, today we're here to talk about Nicki Minaj. If you followed my channel long enough, you know these people have doxed me. These people have gone out of their way to harass me incessantly due to my commentary around this woman being married to a rapist, patterns of egging on her to dox and harass other people, other content creators who make content about her. It's literally been about 3 to 4 years now of targeted harassment non-stop. These girls have not let up, not for a second. And so you can only imagine how full circle of a moment this is for me. I want to be completely honest with y'all. I'm trying not to come from a place of taking pleasure and what I see happening, because I do think a lot of what we're seeing, and I'll get into it later, some of it, I'm not gonna diagnose anybody, but I do feel like there are things happening in the background we may not be privy to. That's only one part of it though. But that having been acknowledged, I'm experiencing what I can only call a sense of vindication, because I have been very consistent in my commentary around this woman, around why I feel like it was of utmost obligation as a content creator online to talk and cover some of the harmful behaviors I've seen this lady display in tandem with her stands. And now to see all of this happening, to see all of the things that I said at one point in time end up being true, end up coming to fruition, end up proving exactly everything that I've been saying from the beginning, I do feel elated. I do feel elated. I do feel vindicated. I do feel a sense of like, yeah, I told you so, because I did. And so my approach with this video today, you're gonna see some moments where I'm just like, I'm talking my shit because it's overdue, but also I'm trying to provide y'all with a balanced critique and perspective. Still trying to, handle this with some grace, because we have decorum over here. So that's going to be the energy for today's video. I first kind of want to start off talking through at the top of the year what we've seen. This lady has gone back and forth with SZA. She's gone back and forth with Cardi. She spoke at the UN around this whole Nigerian genocide that the conservative base is trying to manufacture rah-rah and hysteria for. And since then, there's been this avalanche of tweets and videos on TikTok of people feigning like ignorance and confusion around how we got here. And I'm not gonna lie to y'all, it's irritating the fuck out of me. It's irritating the fuck out of me. And I'm gonna tell you why. For so long in covering this woman, I've been met with, it's not that serious. It's not that deep. You're obsessed. How does this affect you? Everybody has been engaging commentary around Nicki Minaj from the perspective of, this is just pop culture. This is just a celebrity going back and forth with people, starting irrelevant beefs. And y'all are doing the most. Y'all are overthinking it. Y'all are in a way idolizing these celebrities and putting too much weight in the things that they do in the public eye. And to me, that response in particular has always been extremely aggravating, because I've been making content for about 5 years now. A lot of people underestimate the many ways in which pop culture can have material impact and consequences on our lives. And we're seeing that play out with Nicki Minaj. There's a necessity to address the things that are happening online and pop culture and the many ways in which they can affect us in real life. How these things can have material consequences. And we're seeing that play out in real time with Nicki Minaj and her alliance with these conservatives. I really want to meet this woman with nuance and perspective and deep insight. And so a lot of this is going to be me talking about my feelings, thoughts, and opinions. But I also want to do my due diligence and provide y'all with language, terminology to identify certain phenomenon happening as we're currently seeing them play out. So the term I want to introduce to y'all is the Overton window. The Overton window is a political concept, a model for understanding what kind of language and politics are acceptable to the mainstream population at any given time. The Overton window can shift as societal norms evolve. It's influenced by culture, politics, life events, celebrities. Take, for example, Democrats, Republicans. Many of y'all can remember a time when the Republican Party had a veneer of like sophistication. They kept it cute. They didn't do too much. They were still racist, still conservative, still had all the makings of what the Republican MAGA Party is today, but they were less vocal about certain things. They were less forward about their intention. Even the way Republicans did media back then is much more different than they do now. Republicans getting on national TV, on major news platforms to announce that they're racist, fascist was not a thing back then. And now fast forward to today, we have the Donald Trumps, we have or had the Charlie Kirks who get online, who get on TV, say the most ridiculous far-right shit you've ever heard in your life, and it's become normalized. It's become acceptable. That right there is an example of a shift in the Overton window. We as a society have gotten to a point where it is acceptable for these people to get on any kind of platform, national platform, say whatever the hell they want to, even if it's disgusting, even if it's racist, even if it's discriminatory. And we're seeing how this far-right language, ideology, ideas have now moved from being just mere thoughts shared in public to now turning into real-life policy. And so I say this to say, in all my years having critiqued Nicki Minaj, having critiqued her for being married to a rapist, engaging in antagonistic behaviors towards her female peers in the industry, having touched on the many ways she's leveraged her stand base to dox, harass, target, dogpile people simply for being outspoken against her, the downplaying and normalization of these things happening at the time has definitely contributed to where we are now. Because the beats were good for a time, the pink wig, the aesthetics were enamoring, y'all refused to engage with any meaningful criticism around this woman and her harmful behaviors. And here some of y'all are, not my girls though, not my girls, here some of y'all are, months if not years later, being forced to reckon with what you allowed, what you participated in, what you egged on, and what you let go unchecked. Many of you downplayed this woman's antics, chalked it up to her just being Nicki Minaj, the pink wig lady, Roman. And over time, it became acceptable. It became acceptable for her stance to get online and just do whatever, carry on with zero consequences. You know, most of my critiques were never solely aimed at Nicki. It was really aimed at her stance. Because in my experience, having dealt with targeted harassment, dogpiling, doxing from them, I've come to realize that it's kids that are engaging in these behaviors online. And I felt like that was never cause for concern for some people. Like, there is nowhere near enough conversation about how these kids, these babies, are engaging in harmful internet behaviors that could potentially affect them and ruin their lives. These stand bases, these internet social circles these kids are getting swept into, they're partially contributing to an increase in adolescent aggression. That is what I'm seeing as a content creator of 5 years, having dealt with y'all's kids. A couple weeks back, I watched one of the most disturbing videos coming out of Chicago. Mother was walking her kids home. A crowd of children, they could have been older than like 12, 13, 14, following this pregnant woman and her kids home. And eventually, as you watch the video progress, they jump her, they jump the lady, the pregnant woman, they jump her kid, they bash his head into the concrete. And when that video came out, I saw so many people say like, oh my God, like this is crazy. What's going on with our kids? How did we get here? What is going on? Da, 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 da. And all I could think while reading those comments was, as disturbing as it is to see this happen, it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me, not one bit. In the past 5 years of making content, the amount of smear campaigns, targeted harassment, doxings, and dogpilings that I've been through, these are y'all kids. Behind them stand pages, behind them anonymous BFPs. These are y'all children. I'm telling you what I'm seeing as a content creator, as a digital creator in this landscape. This is what I'm coming across. All the DMs, the text messages, the quote tweets. After doing a scroll on the Twitter, finding that city state, finding the school, finding the Facebook, finding the personal account. What I've come to find out and what I've seen consistently time and time again, these are kids. These are young teens. These are young adults. We are raising an entire generation of folk whose social feedback loops reward toxicity, cruelty, spectacle, and most oftentimes the most normalized entry point for that is stan culture. It is these digital groups and gangs these kids have found themselves in. I'm seeing the way these kids maneuver online translate into real life harmful behaviors, an increase in adolescent aggression. And it is extremely heartbreaking to think about. Because in a post-COVID society where so many of these kids are navigating, having been socially stunted after the pandemic, having to navigate so many educational and political failures, dealing with the pressures of societal surveillance with an increase of technology, so many of these kids are crushing under the weight of debilitating anxiety, nervousness, insecurity. It's like these kids never had a chance. They never had a chance. They were doomed to begin with. Combine that with neglect, with these parents not being able to be as physically present in their kid's life due to having to work a job, having to keep food on the table, keep lights on. That void left by lack of rearing, lack of familial support, is filled by an algorithmic socialization. These kids will get on these internet forums in hopes of finding friends, building community, socializing, building social networks around a musical artist, a movie, whatever it is. And over time, they're adopting these harmful, negative attitudes, these learned internet behaviors from their peers online, these stand groups. And over time, as these behaviors are normalized amongst their own social groups online, you don't think that will lead to an increase in certain harmful behaviors in real life? You don't think there will be an increase in adolescent aggression? You don't think these kids internalize those patterns and then act them out in real life? When I was watching that video of the kids in Chicago, I was seeing in real time the kids who weren't fighting, the kids who weren't laying hands on that mama, that pregnant mom, and the boy, they were pushing and egging on other kids to get physically involved in jumping that lady, jumping her son. And I'm telling you, these are behaviors done online being replicated in real life. And so when you ask, what is going on with these kids? Where did we go wrong? What happened? This is part of the reason. And understand, I don't mean to come across as one of those ignorant people who blame internet and video games for an increase in aggression in children. Because I'm actually witnessing in this current moment hysteria being manufactured and drummed up around this issue to manufacture consent for legislation that would restrict kids' ability to use the internet safely. I'm not coming from that perspective. I'm just telling y'all what I'm seeing, what I'm surveying in this digital landscape as a content creator who's been victimized by these behaviors. And honestly, it's really just heartbreaking. It's sad, it's unfortunate, and even more so now concerning thinking about the susceptibility of these kids, these children, these teens, these young adults to conservative rhetoric and ideology through this new alliance Nicki Minaj has with the conservatives, because that's part of the conversation too, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But it's something I'm thinking about, and it's the one thing I'm really agitated that people aren't catching on and picking up. But enough time spent on this. I kind of want to transition now into the why, my thoughts and opinions on what I feel like is going on, why we're seeing what we're seeing, and to kind of add some additional clarity and perspective around this whole alliance, this whole allyship between Nicki Minaj and this MAGA base. Let's start off with the fact that Nicki Minaj for years has been alleging that these corporate giants and machines have been out to get her and sabotage her career. Her latest claims have been against Roc Nation, stating that they have been engaging in shady business practices. She's owed $200 million for her stake in Tidal, which hasn't been paid out to her. They as in Jay-Z. And I want to come out the gate and just say, I find the timing of this very interesting. It's been about a year and some change, a year and maybe 5 months since her spat with Meg Thee Stallion dropping her diss track Hiss. Meg Thee Stallion, who's signed to Roc Nation. I just find it interesting that as of late, she's up the ante on all of this anti-Roc Nation rah-rah. And I want to be clear, this isn't to say that Nicki Minaj hasn't been subject to some form of sabotage in the industry. I think to be in rap, to be a working professional in Hollywood, is to have to be forced to engage in some sort of survival strategy. She's a black woman in rap, for God's sake. That does not surprise me at all. And I'm actually inclined to believe that yes, she has been subject to some form of sabotage, disrespect. And I believe it is probably most likely from her male peers, from male execs in the industry. And I've always wondered why that hasn't been part of the conversation and why she's always had more energy for female peers, a lot of the younger girls who came up behind her in rap. But that's neither here nor there. I also think that it's pretty clear that for so long, Nicki has only ever wanted to be respected in her industry. She's spoken several times on feeling disempowered, feeling like she's subject to the will of corporate powers, feeling like the girls who come up behind her have never given her just due credit for her contributions to the genre, to the art form of rap. And I think that in combination has contributed to this sort of persecution complex we've seen her develop over the years, which I actually want us to bookmark persecution complex, because there's something I'm going to bring up a little bit later that will kind of round out my perspective on this. But most people who followed along her antics on Twitter especially can understand why it is that I'm using that phrase, persecution complex, because she's always positioned herself as somebody being victimized by this industry, by her peers, despite incessantly antagonizing the girls who come up after her and then crying wolf, you know? But yeah, I think if we take a step back, maybe look at it from her vantage point, right? Somebody who has spoken several times on feeling maligned, feeling sabotaged, not just having been disrespected by the girls who came up after you, but also by longtime collaborators, male collaborators, because she's spoken about things that Lil Wayne has said to her. Seeing these men play the game and you're always getting the short end of the stick, I think it makes sense that her pivot in this current moment is to align herself with who she believes can give her access, who she believes can give her power. She's following in the footsteps of her mentor, Lil Wayne, who was pardoned by Trump. She's following in the footsteps of her opposition, Desiree Perez of Roc Nation, who was also pardoned by Trump. She's seeing people in her industry, in her sphere, in her lane, ally themselves with people who she believes can give her that access and power. She wants in. She wants to play the game. And with the way conservatives have embraced her as of late, it gives her the illusion of protection and control of access. But really what they're doing is conservatives are leveraging her likeness, her social status, the network of fans that she's built over the years through her success to broaden their coalition. We've come to see and understand that on that side of the political aisle, these people do not care about facts. They do not care about the truth. They care about visibility. They care about being the loudest. And I think in this age of social media, we're having a digital infrastructure, having a means of disseminating information quickly so that way your ideology, your rhetoric spreads, having people being able to mobilize online to efficiently disperse your communication, your viewpoint out to people in hopes of broadening that base, broadening that coalition. Conservatives see this stand group, the Barbs, as a useful tool in doing that. And the Barbs by far have proven themselves to be a very effective fan base in doing those very things. They're an algorithmically literate fan base. They know how to use the internet very well. They are well connected. They are able to mobilize very quickly and effectively. They're able to disseminate any kind of messaging, whether true or false, and at rapid speed. They're like a decentralized, having no leader, swarm that can effectively carry out the will, the rhetoric, the ideology of these people. And they recognize that. And it's also worth mentioning, this is a very broad group, stand group, people who have come to love and support this woman. Like multi-ethnic, various age groups. This is like gold to the conservative base. And so with all that having been said, Nicki Minaj is not that young Trinidadian girl who was just signed to Young Money, green behind the ears, don't know nothing about the industry anymore. She is now a very wealthy, well-known superstar who has made waves in the rap lane. And so again, if you kind of place yourself in her shoes from her perspective, look at things from her vantage point, having gone through all of the things she says she's gone through, and having accumulated all of this wealth and having all this hyper visibility, the state becomes something you negotiate with. And if you have the sort of platform and social status that somebody like her has, you know, aligning yourself with conservatism is less about values. That's not to say she isn't conservative or she holds on to conservative ideology, but it's less about that and more about risk management. It's more about strategy. It's more about leveraging the little bit of power that you have in this moment to align yourself with people you feel like can put you in another stratosphere, another level of power. And many have speculated that she's allying herself with these people to secure pardons for her brother, her husband. And that's obviously not the case because they were charged, these were state charges that they had, not federal. So the president couldn't really do much in terms of getting pardons for them. But I do believe with the kinds of people she be surrounding herself with, she's positioning herself to make it easier for in the future. If she ever needed a favor, it might get done. There's room for opportunity. There's room for her to take this wherever she wants to take it. But without a doubt, these people will chew her up and spit her out. because that's what they do. But yeah, that is part of my thought process around this. I don't know how far she's gonna take this grift. There is a lot of money in conservatism, so who knows? She might, you know, jump on a podcast with notable conservative figures. She might start a podcast or peddle conservative rhetoric ideology on her own platforms. Another perspective I want to add to this conversation that I feel like I haven't seen many people touch on, and I feel like I'm most equipped to talk about this at length because I'm Caribbean, I'm Haitian. I grew up around women, family members like Nicki. Nicki is familiar if you grew up around Caribbean aunties. She is your average West Indian auntie minus the prayer shawl. The kind of Caribbean auntie who's like deeply religious, socially conservative, major source of news is like the fringe parts of WhatsApp, Facebook, using Yahweh instead of God, anti-Black American. And we'll touch on that later. And I kind of touched on it on my last video of her. Not my last. My first ever video of her that kind of took off on here. We'll touch on that later. We'll circle back. Most likely is or has been under the tutelage of a Caribbean or African self-professed prophet. To understand Nicki, you must understand her through the lens of a woman shaped by that religious experience growing up in the Caribbean, and then making her way to America at a young age. Based on what I've read and researched about her, when I think about her early life, having grown up in a house of domestic violence, both of her parents grew up in the church. Her mom, I think, was a singer, and so was her dad. He was a pastor. He was abusive towards her mom, and she's gone on record stating that there were moments in her childhood where she had to literally get in front of her mom, like block her mom from being beat on by her father. Her father also dealing and struggling with substance abuse. One would wonder that having grown up around those things, being traumatized by those events, like how could she arrive here? How could she be doing the things that she's doing? And honestly, it makes a lot of sense. A lot of these women who I've grown up around in the church, outside the church, women in my own family that I've watched, I've witnessed their journey through life, women whom from a young age were spoon-fed biblical patriarchy, Christian hegemony, they come to develop and navigate a very complicated and warped understanding of their trauma and what caused it. And the complication is primarily due to that Christian, those Christian teachings and ideologies that they were fed. Like that trauma, abuse, violence, misogynoir that is inflicted upon them from a young age that they're forced to navigate, it doesn't move them towards progressivism or being liberal. In many cases, it actually moves them rightward, especially if they were, again, indoctrinated into Christian teachings and understandings. And that's how they filter the world. And in many cases, they adopt these ideals, beliefs, ideologies that they believe are Christian, but it actually tilts a bit towards conservatism. And so when we talk about the beliefs and ideologies, these women like Nicki of Caribbean background become entangled with, how they address and process harm, whether it be sexual violence, physical violence, misogynoir, abuse, etc., racism, they filter all of that through a Christian lens. And so we know in these Christian spaces, the way these folk come to engage with and understand morality, accountability, acknowledgement of harm versus loyalty to family, a family member, loyalty to a religious ideology, rehabilitation, retribution for harm enacted on other people, they have a completely warped understanding of those things that that is far different from what we know, understand, and believe. And as I mentioned prior, Nicki has always had this persecution complex. So couple that with the religious indoctrination. Couple that with, you know, what I've come to understand and see and what I feel is being displayed in front of us. Couple that with the religious psychosis. This is what you get. She truly believes she is fighting a holy and righteous war. And in this industry, with all the disrespect she's had to navigate, with the many ways she believes she's been victimized, that she is God's soldier, God's trooper. And she may not fully align with everything this administration is doing, but she aligns with them on enough to ally herself with these people. And so that's part of it. And so that is sort of my perspective on why I feel like she's been moving the way she has in recent years. She has no issues surrounding herself with predators and abusers because in accordance with the indoctrination, the biblical patriarchal teachings she's been fed as a Caribbean woman, You know, as long as these men have been forgiven and redeemed by Christ, there is no need for accountability. There is no need for justice. In her mind, it's not just allying herself with conservatives or the Republican Party. She's allying herself with the party of Christ, the party of God. And I also want to circle back and emphasize the Caribbean piece and why that's relevant to the conversation in anti-blackness. In my video that took off on here, do y'all remember me saying like she was mocking Megan's southern accent? Nicki has long been antagonistic towards Black Americans, specifically Black American women in rap. And unless you've been on certain corners of the internet, you caught some things on TikTok, caught wind of things on Twitter, or you're of Caribbean descent, you're able to pick up on these things, then it might be something that you're just not privy to or aware of. But I and many others have clocked for some time now that this woman is anti-Black. And it's so funny because it's just like, girl, you're in rap. You built a career in rap, a Black American art form. Yes, an art form with contributions from various folk across the diaspora, but like nonetheless, Black American art form. So it's kind of like, girl, where is your respect? Where's your decorum? You have a lot of audacity. But yeah, I say all that to say this woman has soiled her legacy. I truly believe my biggest prediction is that one day that documentary is gonna come out. That documentary is gonna come out, Surviving Nicki Minaj, Surviving the Petties. That documentary is gonna come out, and if she continues down this lane of engaging in antagonism towards anybody who critiques her, egging on her fans to berate, to harass, to smear, to dogpile, to dox, you will catch a case. You will catch a case. And may that case set the precedent for any celebrity who ever feels emboldened to egg on their fans, their stands, to literally endanger the lives of people who are simply, you know, addressing your harmful behaviors, talking about the things that they're witnessing in pop culture. Like, you are out of control. You've lost your mind. It's been bewildering following this conversation. I was right about everything I've ever said about this lady. I was never wrong. I was never doing too much. It was always that deep. Because here she is, years later, helping this current administration manufacture consent to exploit Nigeria till as old as time. This is what they do. They propagandize. They put all kinds of bullshit out there, create instability in these third world countries, these countries in the global south, say they cannot run themselves, they cannot run their own government, they're incapable of doing what they need for their country, so that way they can intervene, they can go and occupy, loot, rob them of their resources, their natural resources. They did this in Haiti, they're doing it in the DRC, they're doing it in many other places. And here you have a woman, a rapper, a global superstar who's never spoken about anything political at all. Here she is sitting on a stage alongside racists, well-known racists and conservatives, and helping them, you know, continue propagandizing and lying to the public about their intentions and with latching onto this issue, talking about this supposed Christian genocide in Nigeria. Y'all never took it seriously. It's not that deep as a confession of where you stopped, bitch. It's not that deep from where you're standing. It's not that deep from where you're standing. You're in the kiddie pool, bitch. I'm in 6 feet. It's not that deep. It's not that serious. It's not that deep, bitch. With all the educational failures in this goddamn country, I wouldn't trust you to measure shit. I wouldn't trust you to measure any kind of fucking depth. Y'all aren't smart. And it's actually been bewildering to follow this conversation. Barbs are scrambling to figure out how are we gonna sell this? How are we gonna pivot? What narrative can we concoct to explain away the bullshit this woman has gotten herself into? Bird brain bitches on Twitter talking about some Nicki playing chess, not checkers. Huh? You motherfuckers ain't even felt so much as the ridges or grooves on a chess piece. None of you barbs are intelligent. Yeah, and I'm speaking from personal experience. Y'all been harassing me up my ass for about 3 years now. And in every quote, DM, text, it's nothing but grammatical errors, misspellings. All of you use the same 5 words, 2 emojis. Y'all ain't smart. Y'all ain't smart. You bitches is playing bingo, not chess. And if any of y'all were smart, and y'all actually played chess, and you surveyed this political landscape and what Nicki has done in the last couple days to her legacy, you would know that she's a pawn. Anyways, closing thoughts. This one is for my gays, my dolls, anybody in the LGBTQIA plus community. I live in the state of Florida, and under this current administration, I have witnessed in real time people, organizations, nonprofits who were once for the LGBTQIA plus community turn their backs on us, roll back their services for gender affirming care, roll back their funding for LGBTQIA plus organizations and nonprofits. All these people who at one point in time benefited from co-opting our slang, our aesthetics, commercializing our identity, our subcultures, and we've let that go unchecked for way too long. We are watching in real time these people that we've long supported, these brands we've long given our money to, capitulate to the demands of this current administration, and it's indefensible. There is zero excuse. These people are willfully aligning themselves with an administration, with its rhetoric, with its ideology that is actively killing trans women, actively contributing to the subjugation and oppression of everyone who's a part of the LGBTQIA plus umbrella. And I know much of who we are as a community is appreciators of art, creativity. We resonate deeply with people who make meaningful contributions to art, things that we find iconic, things that gag us, things that feel and look tasteful, because we are tastemakers, we are cultural innovators. And therefore, we most times, most often than not, are willing to accept ignorance, disrespect, people being discriminatory, people devaluing our life and our contributions, as long as they are giving us something to gag over. They are giving us creativity. They are giving us something that we can appreciate. And it feels transactional. We're willing to accept that disrespect. We're willing to accept the way people treat us, as long as there's a meaningful exchange in the form of art, vocals, looks, fashion, etc., etc. And I think, again, as people who are cultural innovators, tastemakers, we gotta be more intentional about not allowing these things to go unchecked, unaddressed, and leveraging the contributions we make as a community, the social capital we possess as a community, to start getting these people to fall in line. Because it is unacceptable to me that this woman, who has been largely successful throughout the years due to her queer fan base, them buying her music, them showing up to her performances, is now turning her back on that very same community, going as far as to get on stage talking about some "it's okay to be boys," drumming up hysteria around trans kids in California. Shut the fuck up. And I really want us to gain a backbone, truthfully. Like, I know so many of the people in my age group, like, y'all don't take these things seriously. To y'all, it is just pop culture. To y'all, it is just your fave wilding out on the timeline. But like, we're seeing in real time how this has real consequences. Like, not just in pop culture, but in the political landscape. Like, this is where we're at, y'all. This is where we are. This is where we are. So my ask here is, y'all have a little bit more self-respect. That's it. Like, you are worthy of respect. You are worthy of being honored. You are worthy of living a life unpersecuted, unoppressed. Yeah, and at any point, it is fully okay for you to withdraw your support, withdraw your money from people who do not value your life. People who are aligning themselves with politicians and admins who are legislating, trying to legislate you out of existence. I'm not even asking you to cancel Nicki Minaj or any of these other artists who may be engaging in similar harmful behaviors and patterns. I'm asking you to respect yourself enough to demand more, to speak out when necessary, and make it a habit of doing the self-interrogation and be like, man, does this align with me? Do I want to keep listening to this person? And we live in a time, we exist in the climate where it's not enough, truthfully, to separate the art from an artist, right? Because these people are after money. Somebody like Nicki Minaj is after power. He's after money. He's after access. There's power there in that. You have power in whether or not she's able to get those things, to continue getting those things off of your support, off of your money, off of your back. And so I want you to respect yourselves a little bit more. In all the content I create, the many times I've gone up against this lady, her stand, it's always been from a place of self-respect and knowing what the fuck I'm talking about, and having conviction, having a clear moral conscience, knowing that the things I'm seeing, that the lady I've been supporting for years, this is not what I signed up for. This is not somebody who deserves my support, my continued support. We have to stop the platforming of people who harm us, people who don't care about us. That's it. It's that simple. Anyways, I think that's it. Again, hopefully, if you are seeing this video, I successfully was able to record it on the 24th, edit it down the same day, and have it out to y'all on the 25th, Christmas Day. So I hope y'all are able to tell that I really am trying my best to be back on here and be consistent in giving you guys content and continue building this platform in hopes that I curate an audience of not just like-minded individuals, but smart, creative people who care about the world, seek to better understand what's happening around us, and want to continue sharpening that intellect. Because I do think that is the only way forward under this current administration, to build community and enrich our minds, strive for a deeper learning, deeper understanding, and eventually pass those tools on to the people who come after us. So yeah, as always, I love you guys. Thank you for watching. Merry Christmas, happy holidays. I will see you in the new year.